Hi, good morning, good afternoon again, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are very excited to have you join us today as we share key results and lessons from our Innovation Fund, which supported 6 grantee organizations in developing digital solutions to address smallholder farmers' challenges. My name is Lisa Chassin. I'm an Insights Manager for the GSMA Agritech program, and I will be your host today. So we are extremely grateful to our donors, and we would like to acknowledge the support of UK Aid from the UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, who funded this material. Now let's have a look at the agenda. I will first share a few introductory words about the GSMA Agritech program and our Innovation Fund. Then we will move on to the core of the session with my colleague Emily Gamble, who will then take us through some of the key results regarding the adoption and usage of digital agriculture solutions across our 6 grantee markets. We are also excited to have representatives from 4 of our grantees, Sergio Baji from Agromol Nigeria, Yvonne Bayona from Vodacom Tanzania, Gali Gede from Cultiva, and Nuwan Jayasinghe from Dialogue Sri Lanka, who will share their experiences and lessons learned in designing, developing, and scaling digital solutions for agricultural value chains. After the panel discussion with our grantees, we will open up the floor to questions from the audience. And lastly, our Market Engagement Director, Matt Strickland, will conclude the session by sharing his top takeaways from managing the fund. So without further ado, let's get started with a quick overview of our program and Innovation Fund. So as a program, the GSMA Agritech supports equitable and sustainable food supply chains that empower farmers and strengthen local economies. We bring together and support the mobile industry, agricultural sector stakeholders, innovators, and investors in the agritech space to scale digital solutions for farmers in low and middle income countries. Since 2009, we have been supporting digital initiatives which have registered over 13 million smallholder farmers. In our program, we place a strong emphasis on 3 main topics. Our first area of focus is improved livelihoods. So we aim to improve farmer access to digital agriculture services that can help them reach agronomic advice and financial services. Ultimately, this can lead to an increase in yield and income for farmers, and by this improve their overall livelihoods. The second area of focus is financial inclusion. We are committed to promoting financial inclusion among smallholder farmers by digitizing their sales record and farmer profiles. By creating these digital footprints, we aim to facilitate easier access to financial services, which can have a transformative impact on farmers' lives. Lastly, our program also places a strong emphasis on climate resilience. We support a range of climate resilient services, including weather forecasting, IoT solutions, and agricultural insurance. By supporting these services, we aim to help farmers build resilience to the impacts of climate change and better manage risks related to weather events or other climate-related challenges. And so now we are going to present a bit the Innovation Fund. And just a few words for this. In 2020, the GSMA Agritech program, in partnership with FCDO, embarked on a journey to scale digital agriculture solutions for smallholder farmers. From June 2020 to December 2022, the GSMA Agritech program ran the Innovation Fund for the Digitisation of Agricultural Value Chains, providing grant funding and technical assistance to a consortium of partners to develop, test, and scale bundled agriculture services. Today, we are excited to share with you a short video that highlights the key objectives and impressive results of the Innovation Fund. Let's watch.
There's no sound.
Yeah, Emily, there's no sound. We're gonna go again.
Yeah, is the sound not working?
It wasn't.
Let me try again. Sorry.
Perfect.
Smallholder farmers produce more than 30% of food globally, yet they remain financially excluded and face decreased yields due to climate change. The GSMA Innovation Fund for Digitisation of Agricultural Value Chains is improving their livelihoods, financial inclusion and climate resilience through digital innovation. The Agri-Tech program launched this innovation fund to provide grant funding and technical assistance to innovators. It helps innovators develop, test and scale commercially viable digital solutions for smallholder farmers in low and middle-income countries. 6 organizations secured de-risking grants of up to £215,000.
Our mission is to digitize agribusinesses and transition farmers to sustainable production and traceable sourcing from farm to fork.
Over 500,000 farmers have adopted one or more services developed by the grantees.
I have received a lot of information from Govi Mitru about tea growing. I get this information very often on the whole cycle of tea growing. They advise me on how to prepare the land, how to plant the trees, how to prepare the beds.
With the support of the Innovation Fund, grantees are connecting farmers to a range of digital services.
Farmers had issues accessing loans. Through this agriculture digitization project, farmers are becoming more visible. Financial institutions can see that farmers earned that much in a particular period.
To support the grantees, the GSMA employed a range of technical assistance tools to achieve active and sustained use of the digital services. Farmers can now use digital services offered by Innovation Fund grantees to improve their incomes and better protect from extreme weather events. This benefits everyone.
The agriculture sector allows Vodacom to diversify its revenue beyond its core offerings and serve a new segment of the population while improving farmers' financial inclusion, incomes and climate resilience using digital technologies.
The GSMA Innovation Fund for Digitization of Agricultural Value Chains leverages digital agriculture to improve the lives of smallholder farmers. Find out more at gsma.com/agritech.
Great. Okay, so let's now delve deeper into the impressive results that were showcased in the video. And to guide us through this insightful journey, I would like to introduce you to my colleague, Emily Glembo. Emily is the monitoring, evaluation, and learning manager in our program, and she has been at the forefront of data collection from our grantee projects. Today, Emily will be presenting some key insights on the adoption and usage of the services supported by the GSMA Innovation Fund. Emily, over to you.
Thank you, Lisa. And hi, everyone. It's really good to have you. And we're very excited to share some of the high-level findings and learnings from the past 3 years of implementation. We actually just launched a full report today that summarizes all the findings. And I really encourage you after this webinar to go and download the report so that you get more in-depth findings. The panel discussion will also dig deeper into some of these lessons. So I'll be really going over the high-level stuff. So I'll go over 5 services that we supported, namely digital procurement, digital payments, advisory, loans and insurance, as well as 2 short slides on some findings on inclusivity and smallholder farmer perception of climate resilience and how these services relate to it. So let's get started. I'll start with digital procurement and our findings on this service. So if you don't know, digital procurement in a nutshell is an enterprise service for agribusinesses and cooperatives that digitize profiles of the farmers that they procure from, and it also digitizes the sales records when the farmers sell their harvest to these agribusinesses or cooperatives. So very concretely, what that means is that farmers will go to the collection center, they will have their harvest weighed by an electronic scale, and based on the harvest quantity and quality, the purchasing clerk can generate automatically how much the farmer is due, and the transaction gets recorded on the digital database. So in 3 years, we had 169,000 farmers who had a sale recorded digitally, and that translated into 1.2 million transactions recorded. Not all farmers who will be digitally profiled with an agribusiness or cooperative will then have a sale recorded digitally. That's what we call the conversion rate. And this conversion rate is affected by several factors. First of all, the time at which the services are rolled out really matters. If you roll out digital procurement after your harvesting season, you'll have to wait a few months before you see some transactions coming in and being recorded. It could also be the case that digital profiles are not primarily leveraged for procurement. There's a range of services that you can work off digital profiles, and I'll mention some of them in my next slides. And finally, it could also be because farmers can either choose to change value chains or agribusinesses that they sell to, or even leave the agri sector altogether. So we found that the value proposition of digital procurement is higher for agribusiness clients who have traceability needs and in value chains that have multiple harvests per year. This is because then digital procurement really helps address some of their key needs. And the feedback that we got from these agribusiness clients was really positive. They said that they found digital procurement helps them gain operational efficiencies, it improves the transparency and the accuracy of the procurement data. We really recommend providing extensive support for clients, these agribusiness clients, to roll out the service because they often have multiple collection centers and you need to help train their purchasing clerks in using the digital solution. On the technical side, we also found that offline modes and effective synchronization when you're back online are really critical features for digital procurement because often these collection centers operate in low connectivity environments. Farmers are not really the primary users of digital procurement, purchasing clerks are, but we did ask in surveys how farmers felt about the use of digital scales and having their information digitally recorded, and largely the feedback was positive. What we recommend is really to conduct some awareness raising with farmers to explain why their information is being recorded and the advantages of digital scales. In fact, a lot of farmers came forward saying that they preferred digital scales because it improves the accuracy of the weighing and gives them a few extra grams of harvest that can be recorded for which they can be paid. We also recommend leveraging these digital profiles to offer other services as a bundle to communicate the value proposition of digital profiles. It can be a bit of an abstract concept for farmers, but if you explain to them that not only can their procurement transactions can be recorded digitally, but they'll also have access, for example, to digital advisory or access to digital input loans, that really boosts the value proposition for them. And the last point I want to make on digital procurement is that it really presents a key opportunity to better understand different farmer behaviors. With these digital profiles, we managed to get, among all the farmers' profiles, 91% of those had gender data. And we know that there is a big gender data gap in this sector, especially to the last mile. On the topic of women farmers, our Innovation Fund targeted value chains that typically have lower participation of women in the sale process of the harvest, so going to the collection center and selling the produce. We had 30% of all of the digitally profiled farmers who were women, and out of the 169,000 who had a sale recorded digitally, 16% were women. What was interesting, though, is that having this gender data helps you analyze how these women are using the service. And what we actually found is that repeat digital sale records were more common for women compared to men. And that might indicate stickiness or your loyalty towards the collection center. So these are the types of findings that are really interesting to get, and that really show why digitizing value chains can be a key element in addressing gender data gaps and understanding women farmers. If you have questions, by the way, I encourage you to post them in chat. We are leaving ample time at the end of the webinar to answer them. So as I present, please don't hesitate to post them. So moving on to digital payments now. So when farmers get their sales recorded digitally, they can choose to be paid in cash or digitally. So we supported in the Innovation Fund 2 different types of digital payments. One that is mobile money based, offered by mobile network operators, and the second one being e-wallet apps that were developed by agri-tech companies. Overall, 32% of farmers who had a sale recorded digitally were also paid digitally. That represents almost 53,000 farmers. The farmers that we surveyed who used the service largely had positive feedback on digital payments. Most of them said that the payments were safer and quicker compared to cash, and 50% said that digital payments helped them manage their money better and save more. However, these benefits are outweighed by some key barriers that came out of our research. The first barrier being transaction costs associated with digital payments. Smallholder farmers are extremely price sensitive, and transaction costs were even cited by 35% of users on average across markets as a contributor to decreased income. And this is very much skewed by what happened in Tanzania, when during the implementation of the Innovation Fund, the government introduced a levy on mobile money transactions. It was since lifted, but that happened bang in the middle of the implementation, and that resulted in farmers reporting that these additional fees were detrimental to their income. A second barrier is agent liquidity. When you are in rural areas in the agri sector, and at the end of the month, you have a few hundred farmers who are selling their harvest at the same time and all need to cash out at the same time, this creates agent liquidity issues. And finally, there is a strong preference for cash in these rural areas and agriculture communities. And this is also linked to underdeveloped ecosystems. If there is no place for farmers to spend their digital money, that really undermines the value proposition of the service. This really further reinforces the need for taking an ecosystem approach when you launch digital payments with farmers. You really need to be able to onboard the shops and input retailers, for example, in these communities, have them integrate digital payments, but also work on changing their own behavior and considering digital payments as a viable, means of payment for their business. And finally, on digital payments, we did find that mobile network operators do have an advantage over agri-tech companies when it comes to introducing digital payments. And this is because they can leverage their existing mobile money infrastructure, their agent networks, and also their know-how and expertise on digital wallets. Usually those use USSD channels too, and that really suits smallholder farmers compared to mobile applications. But really the key point here is that even in mobile money markets, the government is really key to foster digital payment adoption. They are key to create supportive environments for digital payments and promoting cashless societies. And we particularly saw that in Rwanda, in one of our implementing markets, where the government promoted the use of digital payments during COVID-19. And that really helped boost adoption by the tea farmers for our grantee MTN Rwanda. I'll now move to digital advisory. So advisory can be provided by SMS, IVR, apps, or even call centers, and they provide agronomic advice and weather forecasts to farmers. The uptake of advisory was high across markets. We almost reached 400,000 users, and it also had the highest activity rates among women users. Advisory was perceived as the biggest contributor to increased incomes by farmers, especially through implementing advice on inputs and fertilizer management, planting, and disease-related advice, which led to greater yields and produce quality. We also found that SMS reading rates were extremely high. We were worried that because it's a rather passive way of sending advice that farmers would not resonate with it, but the reading rates and the satisfaction rates were high. And we also find that SMS and IVR are suited to reach a larger number of smallholders because of the low-tech nature of these services compared to apps that are limited to smartphone users. But those apps also saw relatively good levels of repeat usage. There are some considerations that we'd like to share in terms of tips and tricks to increase user satisfaction and activity rates. And the first one being to share advisory at strategic times during the farming cycle. And what that means is for SMSs, you should keep the frequency of the SMSs low to avoid farmer fatigue, and really send it at key times during sowing, harvesting, and any times there is, for example, a pest outbreak. And for apps, what that means is that you can draw users back to the app to timely content by sending or introducing push notifications. We also found that adding an interactive element to advisory is really key to driving behavior change. For example, we had several of our grantees introduce forums or Q&A sections in the advisory or in-person follow-up with agents. On that latter point, we actually found that a mix between tech and touch was actually the best to ensure that advice is implemented by farmers and really lead to behavior change. And finally, we do recommend training farmers on how to use the more advanced advisory services like IVR and apps so that they can make the most out of all the features. Finally, the last types of services that we supported were agri-digital financial services, and specifically loans and insurance. I'm going to start with loans. We supported 4 loan services during the Innovation Fund. 3 of those were input loan services, and one of them in Tanzania is a digital overdraft service named Songesha, which you might have heard of. Overall, the loans scaled relatively fast. There was a really clear demand from farmers to have access to these loans. And we got really positive feedback on the loan application processes and on the loan repayments. And we actually got relatively low default rates. The input loans were perceived to have a direct positive contribution to farmer incomes because they helped improve quality inputs, which heavily plays a role in getting better yields. Some reflections on the models when launching loan services. when going for input loans, especially in-kind input loans, it's really critical to secure an input provider partnership and have robust logistics to distribute these inputs. The timely delivery of these inputs and having quality inputs are really key determinants to avoid reputational damage with your farmers. And finally, lower ticket loan size does affect the perceived contribution towards improving farmer incomes. We do know that input loans by themselves do not meet all of the broader financing needs that farmers have, such as hiring labor or mechanization, for example. So financial service providers are still very much an essential partner to have to be able to offer cash loans. I'll quickly touch on insurance. We piloted insurance with more than 8,700 farmers, and that included both area yield insurance and weather index insurance, depending on the markets where the grantees operated. Insurance is an advanced financial service. It requires a lot of awareness raising with farmers. Farmers still don't necessarily trust or understand the service, and insurance premiums are seen as expensive. So what we found during the implementation is that subsidizing the cost of insurance so that the cost is not borne by the farmers, or bundling insurance with inputs, for example, by insuring inputs, have proven effective strategies to boost adoption. I want to quickly touch on then gender inclusion and finally climate resilience. So we did do a gender-specific qualitative study during the Innovation Fund. Building truly inclusive services, especially digital services, is the challenge with the smallholder farmer segment. These women generally see lower levels of phone ownership, lower digital literacy levels, and lower accesses to financial services. It's really important to take into account the specific challenges, circumstances, needs and preferences of these women farmers in order to design appropriate and relevant solutions. And the problem is that often people don't know much about these women farmers. So we did a study to find more information on what their challenges were and summarized some key recommendations on how to tailor digital services to women better. And I won't go over all of them. They are all in the report if you want to dig deeper into them. But I will highlight two. The first one being that women often share a phone with their spouse. So they're not necessarily the primary user of the phone, which means that service providers should really be careful to label all the SMSs, calls, or like information that gets sent to the phone as legitimate information coming from the service provider, so that we prevent gatekeeping from this information from the primary user of the phone. You should also encourage sharing knowledge among the household, especially when it comes to financial literacy or agronomic advisory. The second point I wanted to mention is women have extremely busy schedules. You should take that into account when organizing trainings and tailor services to account for women's different roles on farms. We know that the women in the value chains that we worked in were very much involved in, the sowing and the maintenance of the farm, but they're not necessarily the person who's going to go interact with the purchasing clerk to sell the produce, which means that she might not have this economic identity to, for example, get access to input loans. So there might be ways to work around that to offer services to the entire household and not necessarily the main farmer who sells produce. And finally, I'm gonna stop with climate resilience, with climate resilience. The Innovation Fund, as I said, supported the launch of digital advisory services, which included weather forecasts, but also insurance services. So we surveyed farmers to understand how they perceive climate resilience and how these services relate to this climate resilience. And the first point is that farmers are largely very, very much concerned about changing weather patterns. They all know how it affects their crops and their yield and their incomes. Interestingly, when we asked farmers about a hypothetical increase in income and whether that would reduce their concerns over climate, most of them said that it wouldn't have an impact. So we really found that farmers place more emphasis on adapting farming practices through advisory and access to weather forecasts, rather than using financial safety nets to improve their climate resilience. We also found that only 19% of insurance users found that the service improved their climate resilience, which might also have to do with the awareness raising and the novelty of the service. So really the key takeaways here are there's still very much more awareness raising required, especially on the financial means that farmers can use to mitigate the impact of climate shocks, and investing in climate smart farming techniques. The second takeaway is with agronomic advisory and weather forecasts, there is still very much a need to move from simply providing information to the farmers to then having call to actions and really leading to behavior change. And this means designing data-driven advisory that have clear call to actions for farmers with relevant low-cost advice. So I will now stop here and hand over back to Lisa for the panel discussion.
Thank you, Emily, for giving us such valuable insights into the Innovation Fund services. Well, for those of you who'd like to dive deeper into the details, we've launched our report today, as Emily mentioned, and the link has been shared in the chat a couple of times, I can see. Yeah, so you're welcome to go and have a look. And if you have any questions for Emily, please feel free to drop them in the chat as well, and we will address them during the Q&A session in half an hour. I see that some of you have already done so that's good. Yeah, so now let's turn our attention to our esteemed panelists. We are fortunate to have representatives from our grantee organizations today who will join me in a panel discussion to share their experiences of designing and implementing digital agriculture services. So let me introduce them to you. First, we have Yvonne Bayona, the head of sales, IoT, and digital platforms at Vodacom Tanzania. Yvonne has over 17 years of experience in telecommunication sector. She is passionate about technology and how it can support social development. And in her role, she helps businesses and stakeholders embrace and adopt new ways of working with the latest and emerging technologies. Next, we have Nuwan Jayasinghe, the digital inclusion specialist at Dialog Sri Lanka. With more than 10 years of experience in the telecommunication industry, Nuwan believes in uplifting people's lives through impactful product and services. We also have Fajiro Baji with us, who joined us from Agromol, an agri-tech company in Nigeria. Fajiro is a project manager at Agromol, and with a background in engineering, he has spent the past 7 years leading cross-functional projects to improve business productivity and make significant bottom-line impact. Finally, we have Gali Gede, the product management lead at Cultiva, an agri-tech based in Indonesia. Gali has spent over 10 years in tech and product roles in various industries and is currently developing Cultiva traceability solutions to support businesses throughout the agriculture supply chain, enabling them to trace and track their commodities from seed to table. We are delighted to have such a diverse and experienced group of panelists with us today, and we look forward to hearing their valuable insights and perspectives. Thank you. So first, I'd like to discuss the success factors in digitizing services in agricultural value chains. I will be interested to know, what do you consider to be the key factors for achieving success in digitizing agricultural services for farmers? So I'm gonna turn first to you, Nuwan. In 2022, Dialogue has shown an outstanding growth rate in farmer profiling and digital procurement transactions, expanding its user base by 5 to 6 times that year. What factors do you believe contributed to your ability to achieve such a scale?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Hi, everyone. Greetings. I'm Nuan. So, getting the buy-in from tea factories through regular training and communication on the benefits of this service helped us to scale B2B procurement. But tea factories were initially suspicious of why we were getting involved. We had to do lots of explaining from factory management to farmers with supporting data and evidence on how the system works, and then to convince and get the tea factories on board. Now we have managed to onboard 15 factories, which digitally recorded almost 770,000 transactions. The choice of the value chain was also instrumental. Tea farmers sell their produce multiple times a month, so we had rate of repeat usage. The value proposition of digital procurement resonated strongly with tea factories in Sri Lanka, which considered it both a strong competitive advantage and a tool for reducing pilferage and farmer attrition. Also, UX research helped us to better understand the agriculture industry and communicate more efficiently with farmers. And we decided to target our marketing effort at the youth, changing our language style and using promotional materials that featured young male and female farmers in real life situations. Through these initiatives, Dialogue leveraged a partnership with the Tea Smallholder Federation of Sri Lanka to onboard 10,000 farmers from their database and to cross-sell our products. Yes. Lisa, you are on mute.
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Nuwan. It was very interesting. And I'm sure other grantees will agree that getting buy-in from the crop buyer, as well as conducting the UX research, as you mentioned, is instrumental to developing successful services. Thank you for this. So now let me turn to Gali. Gali, Cultiva has recorded the second highest number of procurement transactions of the portfolio after Dialogue. What approach do you think has been instrumental in getting you to scale?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. So yeah, as an agri-tech, yeah, so basically our business model has historically focused on the procurement. Yeah. So yeah, we have the specialized in highly tailored procurement solution. So not only to record the transaction, but also the traceable transaction. So yeah, we operate in multiple value chain across the multiple commodity. And yeah, it makes us like have so many use cases to record the transaction in procurement process. And we continue to iterate our cost software to meet the needs of agribusiness, yeah, to record the transaction, record the processing stage, produce grading, and so on. And at the end, yeah, all the data record, we visualize them in the report, dashboard, and also the map, yeah. And so the agribusiness client can get the insights from there. And also they can trace the journey of the commodity and who the produce, where's the source is coming from. And maybe if they want to check and make sure, yeah, they will not getting resources from the protected forest area, let's say. So it's shown in our another solution, which is in our map. So the agribusiness client can see the solution with start from the procurement transaction using our system. Yeah, that's it, Lisa.
Oh, thank you, Gali. It's great to hear that customization is definitely key for you, for Cultiva, to address
Yeah.
the specific needs of crop buyers And it's also great to hear how you managed to balance this customization with your core product offering. So thank you. Let me now ask Fajiro from Agromol a similar question. Fajiro, Agromol managed to increase farmer profiles by more than 80% during the implementation of the Innovation Fund, with impressive conversion rates of 75% for advisory services and 60% for loans. What strategies have you used to ensure successful adoption and usage of the digital solutions?
Thank you, Lisa. So Pedro, yeah. So in Agromol's case, what we did was that we employed a very two things. A lot of customer farmer engagement on one hand, and the second thing that we also leveraged on was top to bottom approach. So what we did is that in communities where we're active, we started by engaging community leaders and chiefs. And then these community chiefs were asked to nominate like a gatekeeper or like a liaison officer. And the role, and if when this gatekeeper is a farmer, is actually better. And the goal was for this gatekeeper to help us identify the farmers in the communities. So then what we've already done is that we've already de-risked, because when people recommend each other based on their occupation, we can actually have genuine farmers. Then from there, we at Agromol we have an extensive agent network, about 1 agent to 20 farmers. So what happens is that we could actually manage the inflow, and when you now when you now layer the top to bottom approach, community chief, gatekeepers, extensive agent network, and of course a very strong value proposition, because we're giving loans at single digits interest, and with that the farmers also had access to other services like advisory services which were not charged, which helped the farmers better maximize the values of the input loans that they've gotten from Agromol. So we also layered it with other services like mobile crop insurance, climate update and weather information. So essentially it was a bundle service, one that with very strong value proposition, and then it was very top to bottom. So where we engaged the community chiefs and then we propagated the solution downwards, right? Even when we expanded, we also now went on further from onboarding just community chiefs and communities to also onboarding like major cooperative. So this cooperative already had some of them had as much as 40,000 farmers, 50,000 farmers, 60,000 farmers under them. And once we were able to onboard those cooperatives, what happens is that we now had access to more farmers. And by the time we also onboarded the last set of cooperative, the last set of people we onboarded were financial service providers, right? And once we could also onboard financial service providers, then everybody or all the farmers needing input loans from those financial service providers now had to come through us. So our approach and our strategy at Agromol was very one top to bottom, right? And there was also a lot of farmer engagement using our vast and strong agent network.
That is great. Thank you, Fajiro. Well, the strategies of farmer engagement have clearly paid off for Agromol, given the impressive achievements in getting high conversion rates for one advisory, but also for your loan services. Thank you for sharing. Well, now I'd like to hear from our panel some stories of product iteration. And by this, I mean that would be great to know some key changes that you made to your services to help scale up adoption and usage. So to do this, first, I'm gonna turn to Yvonne from Vodacom Tanzania. Hi, Yvonne. Vodacom underwent a significant shift in its business model during the Innovation Fund. Can you elaborate on the initial issue that prompted this shift, the steps taken to adapt the service offering, and the results achieved as a result of these changes? Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Hi, everyone. I'm Yvonne from Vodacom Tanzania. So initially, Mkulima Enterprise Procurement Service was web-based software that required all AMCOSs to have computers and agents equipped with, of course, smartphones, where they would use an application to digitally profile farmers, which was a little bit expensive. And in some cases, these devices were not well handled because we had experienced physical damages and all. And of course, dependency on these computers and smartphones for profiling and procurement resulted to adoption challenges, because in some areas courses had low digital skills, and other areas there was connectivity issues. So adoption was a struggle. However, of course, with GSMA Innovation Fund, we managed to develop a one-stop USSD where both business-to-business procurement as well as business-to-customers farmer-facing services farmers were able to do self-registration through feature phones, and this USSD was able to work even in 2G network. So it was easy actually in terms of adoption. But the other thing that we did during our journey as we were evolving, more farmer details were required in order to give more service to them. So again, with the help of the GSMA Fund, we again developed biometric registration app, which captured more information, and it allowed a lot of information to be analyzed, and they can even be given more service to that. However, of course, with an application, this was used by our own freelancers and not AMCOSs and not farmers. It was simple to use, convenient, and reliable data. And the app actually is connected with our National Identification Authority, where you get credible data pulled from there and verify this is a true farmer. And of course, we went further and developed agribusinesses portal, where they can go themselves there and register the farmers in bulk. So all these enhancement actually allowed us to cover more farmers. I can say having multiple media digital registration and procurement resulted us to increase even farmer from 100,000 to 3.1 million to date. And definitely, honestly, this would have not been possible without this major alteration. And some of our alteration was not directly to service alteration. It was more of structure alterations, because we had to change even our ways of working internally. We had to develop our own agile team for product enhancement development, and that is why we are able to launch quickly USSD app and portal. So, and at the moment, actually, we are working on exploring further on how we can outsource farmer profiling to AgriTech that can ensure clean and high quality data, and we can go to the market quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. That is very helpful.
Yeah.
Choosing the right channel to reach and serve smallholders is definitely something that we picked up in the report as well. So it is good to hear you emphasize this. Thanks. Turning back to Coltiva to also share a story of service iteration with us, Gali. I believe that Coltiva used business intelligence data as well as UX research and farmer feedback to pinpoint areas of improvement for its digital advisory app. And this led you to make some iteration of the service to increase usage. So could you please provide us more details about the initial issue, and what iterations did you make to boost the usage of your advisory app?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. So basically in Coltiva, we call it our advisory app is Farm Cloud. Yeah. So this is the farmer apps. The farmer can interact with the input supplier, with the crop buyer, with field agent, and also providing the access to the personal and also supply chain data, media, e-learning, and also as well as the digital advisory. Yeah. So the key challenge is converting user to become a repeat user, since the usage is at the farmer leisure time after the they finish their farm activity. The farmer passively also receive the information here. And we provide the article in the content section, and the advisory is quite complicated for them to access in the beginning. Yeah, based on our data and metric monitoring, we noticed the significant inactivity with our advisory app and low engagement with the content. And the research revealed that the farmers were mostly unaware of the advisory service available in the apps. Yeah, based on that finding, we simplify the app interface as much as possible, like using simple interface with like clear action button and navigate pane, and changing like content from the wordy article to become video, adapted to the user preference, because a farmer is prefer to watch video rather than read the long article. And also we changing the complicated information into simple and straightforward. And provide also simple action such as like do and don't. Yeah, it's basically to address the low digital literacy among the smartphone user. So this is especially relevant for user segments such as the older farmer, which is the huge number of the farmer. Beside the simplify the app, we also recognize the advisory menu. So we place it that easily accessible to the user, improve the app push notification, include the added SMS notification as a feature, additional feature, to inform the user about the new content that we publish. So with this kind of the iterative improvement, so these are significantly increase and boost the usage our advisory app.
Thank you. It's impressive to see how you use data from usage and adoption to make iterative adjustments and basically hear farmer to simplify the application. Thank you for sharing your insights with us. So I'm now turning to Agromol, who opted to provide digital advisory as well, but through SMSs instead of an app. Fajiro, can you please elaborate on the lessons learned from implementing SMS advisory and how Agromol incorporated these lessons to improve the SMS advisory service?
Thank you, Lisa. So for the advisory services, when Agromol first started, we tried to make it. We tried to send SMSs to farmers in frequencies, right? So we're trying to do 3 times a week. So the idea was every week we send we send SMSs to farmers on Mondays, on Wednesdays, and on Fridays to advise them and to guide them through the farming cycle. But after we did our UX research and monitoring surveys, we found out that for farmers it was information overload, and the frequency of the SMS were too much. Hello. Okay. And the frequencies of the SMSs were too much, resulting in low reading so they were not reading the SMSs again. So what Agromol now instead did was that we tried to turn this around, and instead of sending SMSs weekly or bi-weekly, what we now did is that we now started sending SMSs per activity. So if the farmer is planting, we send an advisory message that advises the farmer that teaches the farmer all the best agronomic practices for farming, for planting. When it's time for a fertilizer application, we send an advisory message that explains and that breaks down fertilizer application. When it's time for to apply your urea, we send advisory. So SAEP's now sending SMSs per activity. And what we now found out is that once we could sync the advisory messages to the planting in calendar and also now send it out per activity, what we found out was that the satisfaction score of the advisory this thing increased, because now it now happened that the advisory message had more value to the farmers because they got the information when needed, and then they were able to apply it. And from this, the major distinct lessons that we learned at AgroMore is that it is more important to send advisory messages to farmers when they need it than sending it weekly or bi-weekly or any other frequency. So it's more so right now, going forward, since that every other project that AgroMore has implemented digital advisory, all advisory has been per activity. Yeah, starting from pre-planting, 1 week after planting, 2 weeks after planting, fertilizer application like that up until harvest. And this has actually given AgroMore the best possible impact on the farmers.
That's great. Thank you, Fajiro. Also, I believe that for you as well, adjusting the service to customer feedback has really helped you scale this service. Thank you. I'm sure these implementations were not without challenges. So what I like to discuss now is the challenges, the roadblocks that you faced along the way and how you navigated these challenges. So Gali, it appeared that Coltiva encountered specific obstacles when attempting to expand digital payments and loan services among its user base. To provide some context, the company made more than 40,000 cash payments to farmers, while there were only 308 digital payments. And in terms of loans, Coltiva issued 217 loans, despite having a user base of 400,000 farmers. So could you please elaborate on the challenges Coltiva faced in this regard and the measures taken or planned to address them?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. So yeah, correct that currently Coltiva facing that two factor, your payment and also loan. Yeah, Coltiva for the payment, Coltiva faced the challenge in scaling digital payment to farmer in Indonesia. There is some factor, such as like high transaction fee, like lack of the ecosystem for spending digital money, and lack of the cash out point when the farmer receiving the full e-payment from their crop transaction. Yeah, we try to address some factor from the above that I mentioned before. Like we decide to engage with another payment provider as an option to secure a better rate because the transaction fee have been a major reason why the adoption of the e-payment was so low. And yeah, another thing is we also introducing the split payment in crop transaction. So there is an option that farmer will receive partial cash and cashless. So basically, this is to help the farmer and emphasize the importance of saving. But in the same time, they still have some partial cash for daily need, like to buy the grocery, food for family, or for the children, while the raising awareness of the service to push the adoption. Yeah, specific again regarding the loan. Access to capital and input is high value proposition for the farmer, but onboarding financial institution remain a key challenge. As most lack understanding of the business opportunity behind the agri financial service and the credit scoring model that leverage earning based assessment of the creditworthiness. Documentation and collateral requirement were excessive with the local bank. So only a small farmer was successful with this assessment. We continue to try to work to enhance our solution in Coltiva. So we work with the farmer group cooperative and digital bank to reduce the interest rate and streamlining the administrative process. And we also work with the trader as a collection point. So the farmer, if they want to do loan repayment, they can use the crop when they're selling to the trader.
Thank you for sharing with us, Gali. So I hear that it can be difficult to negotiate with third-party providers, especially financial service providers. So let's see with other grantees if their experience has been any different. Yvonne, as part of a leading MNO in your market, I would like to know if you faced similar challenges when establishing partnerships with financial service providers. And additionally, what other obstacles did you encounter when trying to scale up Sangesha, your loan overdraft service? I'm curious also to know why M-Pesa payments have sold since the end of 2020, as Emily mentioned in the presentation. Can you explain what happened and what are you currently doing to boost digital agriculture payments? Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. So it is true, as MNO, we encountered a lot of challenges when we're trying to onboard FSPs, financial service providers. And most of them are very wary to engage in agriculture space, in agriculture finance. And we can't understand their point of view because there are a lot of dynamics in agriculture space, especially in our market. And that is why financial providers consider agri loans as high risk space. But in this case, our role as a tech company is actually to come up with innovative digital ways to mitigate those kind of risks. So, but despite of challenges that we still have partnered with microfinances institution that caters to low income segments, and farmers were able to access mobile money overdraft for their small day-to-day activities. So as they are keeping using the overdraft, we call it Songesha, we are developing a data collateral model. We call it a data collateral model because we will use the same data to do credit scoring and issue loans to our farmers. And we can use the same data as well to share with our financial institution just to give them assurance that we know these farmers. And as we speak, we are piloting with multiple agribusinesses such as Wakulima Tea, Asas, cotton ginneries, and we're also pushing SMSs to our database so that our farmers can continue using Songesha, and we have enough data actually to do this credit scoring. And on the other side, another challenge we faced was during payments. We really prefer digital payment here in Tanzania, although Tanzania has a challenge in terms of government levies, and here Tanzania, relatively the mature mobile money market is 39% are living in rural areas, and they do have mobile money account, but they're sensitive when it comes to pricing the charges. So it is still an issue as we speak today, but we're still lobbying from government side to see how maybe smallholder farmers can have special waivers. So high transaction fees was a challenge, low awareness, of course, low liquidity at urgent locations was a barrier, but of course we have addressed that already. And of course, just to give more example, so in 2021, the higher fee caused Cotton Board actually to say they are no longer going to pay cotton farmers using mobile money. So it dropped really our performance. And of course, the fact that the Cotton Board saw that, they announced 3 ways of paying farmers: cash, bank, and mobile. So the moment you do that, farmers will prefer cash. But when you say now this season we are going cashless, definitely farmers will have no option and use cashless. So having multiple means, as in cash, bank, and mobile, they opted to be paid via cash. So it has impacted as well perception on mobile money because of the levies. And of course, to support the uptake of digital payment service at the moment, we are working with local government to strengthen enabling policies, environment, as well as infrastructure. We are raising awareness on the importance of digital payment because we're using the same data to give them other services like financial services. And definitely when you want to pay farmers, you also need to know their KYC, who they are, where they are. So the other challenge apart from payment is the process of digital profiling farmers. So the farmer profiling is, I'll be honest, it is capital intensive. I'll give an example here. If you want to register one farmer, it will cost you around 2,500 to 3,000. So let's say if you have 5.7 million farmers, your cost will range between 14 billion to 15 billion. So that is very expensive. And when we talk about these costs, we include everything, logistics cost of people going in rural areas. As you all know, Tanzania is very wide. People will go to rural areas to register farmers, data verification, commissions, devices, system development. A lot of costs are going into that. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, our regulatory environment in terms of tariff was hindrance. So they introduced levy in 2021. And of course, as we speak, they reduced like 3 times. In the beginning, they reduced 30%, and then later they reduced to 43%. And later again, they reduced by 50%. So initially, the highest levy was 10,000. And now it has been reduced to 2,000. So it's a good step. It's a good step, although it's still a problem to a smallholder farmer. And by this reduction, we have increased even our disbursement this year. As I speak, from April 2022 to March 2023, we have disbursed 4 billion to like 14,000 farmers. This is after they've reduced the levy. So it's a step. It's a step. And of course, as we continuing digitizing agriculture sector still needs smartphone penetration. So there's a need of device financing, a lot of partnership with device organization that are doing this business. So yeah, we're still in that process of working with them. And of course, as we continue to digitize this sector, we also need someone to de-risk loan product. So we're looking forward to work with a lot of donors and investors. And in terms of Songesha, as you have asked, and Emily also presented, so the challenge was here initially when we launched Songesha, there was no how would I put it? Biometric verification or the biometric registration was not a mandatory. But so we had farmers, we had people who are using Songesha, but we didn't have their biometric. So when government introduced biometric verification, we were mandated actually to bar some of our customers, including farmers, who had already taken the loan. So it was really a hit to us because we had to bar some of our customers, and they were supposed to pay us. So the moment you bar them, it means they will not be able to pay you back. So now, of course, slowly we are recovering, and we are doing great as we speak, because majority of users are not required to own a SIM card or to take a loan without having a NIDA. So those are really the challenges. The last thing maybe I can mention again, when we were introducing Songesha in the beginning, the financial sector were not interested. There was no appetite. But after seeing the success, now everyone is want to join us and do this. And since we do not have, of course, license to issue loans, yes, we welcome them to work with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. It's very insightful, a lot to unpack. I believe these challenges of digital payment fees and partnerships with FSPs were faced across the portfolio, and it is key to raise awareness about them to create more conducive ecosystems and partnerships. So thank you for doing this. So given the time, let's now move on to our final topic of discussion today, and I would like to address the impact on grantees' businesses. So I will turn to Nuan from Dialogue. As we previously discussed, Nuan, Dialogue successfully scaled its digital procurement and advisory services. I am interested to know how this uptake has translated into business revenues. Have you noticed any other benefits to your business of offering digital agriculture services?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Digital procurement helped us to generate direct revenues, even after an initial fee reduction for factories. The factories recorded digital procurement transactions worth 450 million rupees every month, with a farmer base of 32,000. That is almost equaling to 1.2 million US dollars. Dialog also increased their mobile network subscriber user base by 10,000 customers thanks to digital procurements. On farmer advisory, the premium model offered by Dialog cost farmers 30 rupees per month. Despite the low price, Dialog reported revenue generated of up to 500,000 LKR per month. Also, we have experienced higher user retention and loyalty to the network with increased usage of data and voice. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, great. That's great to hear, Noan. It's impressive to see the direct revenues generated through digital procurement and the success of the premium advisory model offered by Dialog. Thank you. I see that there are a lot of questions on the chat, and to have some time to address them, I think it is now time to close our panel discussion. And I'd like to express my gratitude to all of our panelists for sharing their valuable experiences with us today. And more is included in our report. Thank you. So as we move on to the Q&A session, I'd like to introduce my colleague Matt Strickland, the Market Engagement Director at the GSMA Agritech, who will moderate the session. Matt has been managing the implementation of the Innovation Fund on our side and is well equipped to provide insights and guidance on any questions from the audience. At the end of the Q&A, Matt will also be sharing some concluding remarks from his own experience managing the Innovation Fund. So over to you, Matt.
Thanks, Lisa. And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today and thanks for sharing all these questions. So I'm going to give the panel a few minutes rest and go back to Emily with a question from Angel Lee that was shared earlier, which was, it would be great if you can share how do you monitor the uptake and user benefits of the digital tools from time to time, and what are the challenges of collecting such data in the field? So Emily, maybe you can offer some thoughts on this, please.
Yeah, that's a great question. So part of the technical assistance, if you will, that we offered grantees during the Innovation Fund was resources to conduct quite a lot of surveys with farmers. So on the one hand, when you offer digital services, you do generate a huge amount of data. So we did business intelligence data analysis on a regular basis to monitor the uptake of services. So that gives you trends in terms of activity rates, how many people are using the data, are using the service, sorry, and who is using it. And then to answer the why of why are farmers satisfied with the service, why are they satisfied or not, we ran 2 to 3 surveys per grantee with about 400 farmers each time, and fed this feedback back to the grantee almost on an annual basis, effectively. And then when it comes to the impact of the services, we did 2 studies with 500 farmers each time, including some additional qualitative interviews with about 12 farmers. And we did that at 2 points in time during the Innovation Fund, kind of like midway and at the end, to observe the perceived benefits. I hope that answers your question. The challenges, I mean, associated with conducting this type of research, one of the advantages of working on digital services is that you have a database of farmers who are actually using the service, including their phone numbers. So we went with the option of conducting phone interviews with farmers, and we worked with our supplier Altai, our friends and suppliers Altai, who conducted the research on our behalf. And then when it comes to the qualitative interviews, we really relied on the grantees who have really boots on the ground, have agent networks that helped us find farmers to interview. So when it comes to challenges, all in all, it wasn't that bad. I think, you know, when it comes to phone surveys, you always have to deal with response rates that might sometimes be a bit low. But again, if you leverage your BI data and have a large pool of farmers that you can call, you end up with pretty good sample sizes. I hope that answers the question.
Great stuff. Thanks, Emily, very much. Okay, I'm going to come back to the panelists while we got them online. So this is open question. Whoever wants to dive in, please feel free. So Wanjiku is asking, on farmer profiles and the ability to deliver bundled services, how did you ensure comprehensive farmer data collection? What challenges did you encounter? And is this data open to other agribusinesses in the country to leverage? So can I ask for someone to jump in on that, please? Or maybe I can, yeah, go for it, Yvonne. Thanks.
Okay, so, okay, Yvonne.
All right, thank you. So maybe I'll be short and then you'll continue in future. All right, so from our side, the question is, how do we ensure that we capture everything? So we had to go on ground and ask what are the relevant information that will be required for someone, for example, to issue a certain service. So even we consulted our financial institutions, the vendors, the partners that we wanted to work with, what kind of data that they would like to see. For example, if we are to partner and give service to these farmers. So we went to the level of knowing, okay, is this your farm or you're renting, are you hiring, what type of tools you're using, what type of fertilizer have you used for the past, all those kind of information were being gathered there. And we try to use our freelancers to do this registration on behalf, because it was easier, because they have digital literacy with using the app. And in terms of USSD also, we allowed farmers to use USSD for self-registration, but we name it as a partial registration. And then when freelancer comes, they will finish up their registration, because they will go there and take the picture, the biometric, and finish the registration. So the challenges that we faced, of course, farmers will be like, why do you want to register me? Do you want to tax me more? So it was more of, if you know what I'm owning, if you're asking me a lot of questions like how many acres, do I have another acre, or what else I'm cultivating, it's like you want to tax me more. So that was the perception on ground. And we had to do a lot of awareness, a lot of engagement. Of course, the other challenges was more on logistic. Some areas were very remote areas. So what we did eventually, we had to partner with government, leveraging on fertilizer subsidy, which was happening luckily. Government announced to farmers that they should meet somewhere central, and then we find them in one place, then we register them. So it was easy actually to scale up in that way. I don't know if I've answered the question.
Thanks, Yvonne. Fejiri, I think you wanted to pipe in with something.
Okay, so in AgroMall, for our data collection requirements, what we did is that since we work with a lot of financial service providers, we kind of mirrored the kind of data that they would collect. So if you were to go and open a bank account in Nigeria, what information would you need to open a bank account? And that was what we mirrored our data collection request against, because we're looking at, number one, we wanted it to be possible that when we onboarded these farmers automatically had a bank account opened for them in one of our partner banks, so that we could use leverage on that to offer them other financial services. And two, we also had a view for credit scoring. So we also collected data that would we also collected data points that we needed for credit scoring. So those were the two things that we leveraged our data collection requirements on.
Great, thanks, Fejiri. Just while you're on, there is a question directed directly to you from Wanjiku, which was, what do you see sorry, let me just get this straight. What do you see as sustainability in farmer onboarding when the grant ends, given the heavy in-person onboarding? So yeah, how beyond the term of the grant, how are Agromol approaching farmer onboarding?
Okay, so right now, as we speak, Agromol is investing a lot into self-onboarding. The first business model that we rolled out was heavily leveraged on agent presence and human touch points. But we've found out that this is not very scalable, because for every new locality or every new state, we have to onboard a ton of agents, and we are trying to spread across all 36 states in Nigeria, and have like strong ground presence. And because of that, we've actually discovered that the amount of agents we are onboarding is growing exponentially. So what we've done is that we are rolling out self-service. We are targeting we're trying to target a new demography of farmers, young farmers that are tech savvy, that know how to use smartphones, that are digital literate. So the goal for this is that we already have the solution. We built it. We're about to launch we're launching in the coming months. So the goal of this is that instead of us needing an agent to go and onboard a farmer, capture the farmland, capture the farmer KYC, why can't a user just download the app on their smartphone, self-onboard themselves, walk around their farm and capture their farmland, and then they can now request for Agromol's services from digital advisory to input loans to mobile insurance, to weather updates and the rest. So with this, the goal is that if eventually we're trying to now, so what this is trying to say is that we're trying to even decentralize this thing, extension services and out our self onboarding app, that would actually drive down the cost of managing and recruiting agents, and that is our path to sustainability.
Fabulous. Thanks, Feji. So just I think we can probably squeeze in one last question. We're up against it on time, but we've got lots of questions, so apologies if we don't answer everything live just now. But maybe I can invite either Guido or Nuan. There are a few questions here about how we've handled low literacy, or what grantees have done to account for low literacy users. So maybe if you have a short I know it's a big topic, but maybe a short answer on how either Cultiva or Dialogue have approached this, please.
Yeah, actually, while we are reaching farmers, we had to mostly visit them by ourselves, given the situation with the COVID and all. So then we had to arrange small gatherings and educate farmers on how to use the technology. And give them the basic knowledge. And another thing we did was we were focusing on younger generation of farmers, and we trained them. And another thing we did was we were training the factory staff and line agents on how to use the technology, and if any farmer wanted to know more details, then they can get in touch with respective line agent or factory staff. So that's one thing we did.
Thanks, Nuan. Okay, I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to say thank you for all the questions. I know we haven't answered everything. We will see what we can do to get these some answers for these. But if there are any burning questions that have not been raised in the chat or Q&A, then please do get in touch with the team, and we'll do our best to answer these in the next few days. Just wanted to say that this report and this webinar really is the culmination of 4 pretty intense years for the team. And I'm really proud of what the team and also the grantees have achieved in what has been pretty exceptional circumstances since we launched in the middle of 2020. So like everybody, we've also had to change the way we operate, not only internally, but in the way that we deliver our technical assistance and work with our partners and work with our grantees. A particular highlight was streaming an interview, I think from Indonesia, streaming an interview, having live transcription across 3 different continents was a particular highlight and kind of reinforced how digital can overcome a lot of challenges that we face. So just wanted to take a few moments to reiterate a couple of the key learnings that have been highlighted today and are heavily mentioned in the report. So we've seen that digital procurement really is liked by farmers. They feel that it is almost like an increase into their income because they're getting paid more accurately for what they are actually producing. You know, the amounts aren't getting rounded down to the nearest half kilo. Then mobile money, it's still some way to go to be fully adopted. It is growing, but there are still a lot of challenges. And actually what we saw was some of the farmers found this or interpreted it as a slight decrease in income, largely because a lot of the fees are still quite expensive and some of the other issues that Yvonne mentioned with levies and taxes and that sort of thing. Advisory, on the other hand, farmers did perceive this as an actual a tool to help increase incomes with advisory, and was really well adopted amongst the farmers. We've seen loans reasonably well adopted. There's still a way to go, and for greater impact, what we do need to see is greater flexibility in the types of or more specific agri loans available to smallholder farmers to fulfill the other needs they have beyond simply access to inputs. We've also seen that the gender gap remains quite high. I know there are a few questions about gender in the chat. We still see this gender gap, and with greater understanding and perhaps also a greater focus on the role of women farmers or female farmers in the farming household, we expect to see more tailored services rolling out in the coming years. Changing weather patterns are, of course, a major concern for smallholder farmers. And again, the findings from this Innovation Fund period saw that farmers were focusing or saw more value in services geared towards adaptation, so advisory and weather information that gave them more of a long-term view were actually valued more than some of the financial safety net type services, so insurance, which were perhaps a shorter term solution for them. We've also seen, and Nuwan's just talked about this, in fact, and Feji, and in fact, all of the panelists have talked about this, in-person and face-to-face interactions are still really important, particularly with first-time users and where use cases are quite complex. We've seen that insurance has taken a while to pick up, and largely this is because there's a big trust barrier and a complex use case that takes a while for farmers to understand, but also there's no immediate payback when they hand over their money, for that insurance service. So linked to this, the role of field clerks, the role of agents is really important. They can make and break services, and so heavy training from the stakeholders to make sure they understand the role and the service is really important. And then just finally, so stakeholders, clear roles and responsibilities between the partners in a project, making sure they're aligned, rolling out services. Emily touched on it earlier with making sure services are launched in time with the harvest period, but making sure that, everything is in place when you do roll this out to provide a good user experience for smallholder farmers. And then just finally, a couple of thank yous. So there's too many people to mention, but firstly, I just wanted to reiterate our thanks to the grantees for the hard work that they've put in over the Innovation Fund period. It's been really great fun working with you and some really good impact that we found. I also want to make a note to our partners, so our MEL and UX partners, Altai and Yux, who have been great support and shown great flexibility throughout the couple of years that we've worked with them. And of course, to Emily and Lisa, who have poured their heart and soul into this report over the last few months and led today's webinar. So just finally, a big shout to UKAID and FCDO, who have made this Innovation Fund possible. We know there's still a lot of work to do, and we're excited to be part of this journey going forward. So that's all from me, and back to you, Lisa. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone that contributed today with insights or with questions. We're very grateful. We hope that you found the webinar very insightful. For those who were not, who joined a little late, I was mentioning that this webinar was being recorded and that the recording will be made available in our website in a couple of days, as well as the report that is already on the website at the moment and the video that we showed at the very beginning. So with that, I wish you all a good day, and we look forward to engaging with you again in the future. And as Matt said, please feel free to contact us with any questions or requests. Thank you very much.
Thank you.